I fixed 3 transmissions, kissed my mother's cheek, and laughed until my ribs hurt. All before my sister's phone call shattered everything I thought I knew about love. That Sunday started like every other Sunday for the past 38 years of my life. The Benedetto house in Parma smelled like marinara and garlic bread. My Uncle Sal was screaming about the Browns' defensive line. And somewhere in the chaos, my cousin's kids were chasing each other with wooden spoons they'd stolen from the kitchen. This was home. This was family. "Antonio!" My mother's voice cut through the noise like a knife through warm butter. "Help your grandmother to the table." I was already moving before she finished the sentence. Nonna Lucia was 92 years old and still insisted on making the trip from Rocky River every Sunday. Her hands shook when she gripped my arm, but her eyes were sharp as ever. "You're getting gray," she said in Italian, poking at my temple. "Only because you worry me, Nonna." She laughed. That raspy sound that always reminded me of my childhood, of sitting in her kitchen learning to make gnocchi while Grandpa Joe argued politics with the television. "Worry? I'll outlive all of you." I believed her. The table was a battlefield of plates, wine glasses, and elbows. My brother Dom sat at one end with his wife Teresa, their 3 kids wedged between them like little peacekeepers. Polly was across from me, already on his second helping of braciole, and my sisters Gina and Maria flanked our mother like loyal soldiers. 23 people crammed around a table meant for 12. Perfect chaos. "So there I am," I was saying, the whole table leaning in, covered head to toe in transmission fluid, and this guy in a $3,000 suit, starts lecturing me about automotive repair. "What did you do?" my brother-in-law Mike asked, already grinning. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Sir, the only thing I know for certain is that your BMW is now leaking from a hole that definitely wasn't there when you brought it in." I paused for effect. Then I handed him the piece of his exhaust system that fell off when I touched it. The table erupted. Dom was laughing so hard he nearly choked on his wine. Maria had tears running down her face. Even my mother, who'd heard every story I'd ever told at least 3 times, was shaking her head with that smile she only gave when she was genuinely amused. "Where's Danielle?" Ma asked suddenly, and the question landed like a dropped plate. I shrugged, reaching for more bread. "Working. Quarter end close at the firm. You know how it is." Across the table, I caught Gina and Maria exchanging a look. That particular look sisters give when they're thinking something they won't say out loud. I filed it away, didn't examine it too closely. "She's been working a lot lately," Ma said. Her lips pursed slightly, the Italian mother's equivalent of a warning shot. "It's busy season," I kept my voice light. "Partnership's coming up. She's putting in the hours." Ma didn't say anything else. She just patted my hand and passed me the Parmesan, but I could feel the weight of everything she wasn't saying pressing against my shoulders like a physical thing. Later, I helped wash dishes while the men migrated to the living room for football. The women clustered around the kitchen table with espresso and biscotti, their conversation dropping to that low conspiratorial register that meant they were discussing something important. "Tony's too good for her," I heard my Aunt Rita say. "I've always said it." "Rita," my mother warned. "What?" "It's true. That woman looks at our family like we're something she stepped in." I dried a plate louder than necessary, and the conversation shifted to Cousin Angela's upcoming wedding. But the words stuck with me, a splinter I couldn't quite dig out. The call came at 2:47 p.m. on Monday. I know the exact time because I was under a Honda Accord, fighting with a stripped bolt that had no business being that stubborn, and I remember thinking I should break for coffee. The Rolling Stones were playing on the shop radio. Paint It Black, which would later feel sickeningly appropriate. My phone buzzed against the concrete floor. I slid out from under the car, wiping my hands on a rag that was probably making them dirtier. Gina's name glowed on the screen. "What did you break now, Gina?" She was crying. Not the frustrated tears when her kids drove her crazy or the angry tears when her husband forgot their anniversary. These were different. These were the tears that meant something fundamental had broken. Tony, her voice cracked. Tony, you need to… I'm so sorry, I didn't want to… Oh God, Tony. The world tilted. My blood went cold, and I was already moving toward the bay door, away from Dom and Polly and their curious looks. Gina, what happened? Is it Ma? It's Danielle. For one horrifying second, I thought my wife was dead. I thought Gina was calling to tell me there'd been an accident, and I felt the ground open up beneath me like it was ready to swallow me whole. Tony, I saw her. I saw her with someone. A shuddering breath. They were… Tony, I took a video. I had to. I'm so sorry. The ground didn't swallow me. Something worse happened. It stayed solid, and I had to keep standing on it. Send it to me. Tony, send it. My hands were shaking when I opened the attachment. I don't know what I expected. Maybe some mistake, some misunderstanding, something that would make sense once I saw it with my own eyes. The video was 37 seconds long, crystal clear. Beechwood Place Mall, the outdoor section near the fountains. And there was my wife, in the blue dress I'd bought her for our anniversary, holding hands with a man in a gray suit. They stopped walking. She laughed at something he said, and the sound cut through my phone's speaker like a blade. I hadn't heard her laugh like that in months, maybe years. It was light and free and completely genuine, and it wasn't meant for me. The man leaned in. They kissed. Not a quick peck, not the kind of kiss you give a friend. This was intimate. Familiar. This was the kiss of two people who had done this 1,000 times before. She touched his face afterward. Gentle. Tender. The way she used to touch mine when we first started dating, back when every moment together felt like a gift. I watched it 3 times. Around me, the world kept moving. Cars passed on the street. A dog barked somewhere. Dom called my name from inside the shop, wondering where I'd gone. I couldn't hear any of it. I couldn't hear anything except my own heartbeat, pounding so hard I thought my chest might crack open. The 4th time I watched it, I noticed the ring on his finger. A wedding band, catching the light when he reached for her hand. I drove to my mother's house. I don't remember the drive itself, just suddenly being there, standing on the porch where I'd stood 1,000 times before, unable to make my hand knock on the door. Ma opened it anyway. Of course she did. She always knew when one of her children was hurting, could feel it across town like some kind of maternal sonar. Antonio. Her face shifted instantly from surprise to alarm. What happened? Tell me. I couldn't speak. I just held out my phone. She watched the video. Her face hardened into something ancient and fierce. The face of a mother whose child has been wounded. When it ended, she handed the phone back to me, and her voice came out quiet and cold. That woman. I finally found my voice. How long? You don't know? I don't know anything. She cupped my face in her hands, the same hands that had bandaged my scraped knees and made my favorite cookies, and held me when my father died 3 years ago. You go home. You find out. Then you come back here. She kissed my forehead the way she had when I was small and afraid of thunderstorms. You are a Benedetto. Remember that. We do not break. As I turned to leave, she added quietly, almost to herself. Your father always said there was something cold behind her eyes. The drive home was torture. 12 years of memories flooded my mind like a dam had burst. Our wedding at St. Rocco's Church. Danielle, in white, looking at me like I was the only person in the world. The house we bought in Lakewood, where I'd spent 3 weekends tearing out the old bathroom and building her the spa-style retreat she wanted. The baby we lost 5 years ago, the one we never talked about. The grief that sat between us like a stone neither of us could lift. How she'd changed after that. Distant. Focused on her career, I told everyone who asked. I made excuses for her constantly. She's tired, work is stressful. She shows love differently. When had I become a fool? I pulled into the driveway behind her car. She was home early. Some part of me had hoped she wouldn't be, had hoped for more time to figure out what to say, how to say it. The kitchen smelled like rosemary. She was making something complicated from one of those cookbooks she'd bought and never used until recently. A glass of wine sat on the counter. A good bottle, one we'd been saving. She was humming. That detail hit me harder than anything else. She was humming while my world was ending. She was happy, genuinely happy, and it had nothing to do with me. Who is he? She startled, spinning around. The wooden spoon in her hand dripped sauce onto the floor. I watched her face as she processed my expression, watched the color drain from her cheeks like water from a sink. What? Who are you? I held up my phone, pressed play. Turned the volume up so she could hear her own laugh echo through the kitchen we'd designed together. The kitchen where we'd planned to raise children. The kitchen that now felt like a crime scene. Tony, I can explain. Who is he? My voice didn't sound like my voice. The neighbors later told investigators they heard it 2 houses down. At that moment, I didn't care. I didn't care about anything except the answer to that question. She reached for me. My wife of 12 years reached for me, and I recoiled so violently I hit the wall behind me. My fist went through the drywall, not aiming for her, never aiming for her, but needing to hit something, or I was going to come apart at the seams. Blood welled from my knuckles. I didn't feel it. 12 years, Danielle. My voice broke. 12 years I've been building a life for us. And then I was crying. Not the dignified tears you see in movies, not a single manly drop rolling down a stoic cheek. I was sobbing. Ugly, broken sobs that tore themselves from my chest like they were alive and desperate to escape. I loved you. I loved you so much. I slid down the wall, sat on the cold tile floor, my ruined hand bleeding onto the grout we'd picked out together. I thought we were a family. I thought, God, I wanted children with you. I begged you for children. She moved toward me again, and I jerked away like she was on fire. No, don't you dare touch me with those hands. My voice dropped to something worse than yelling. Quiet. Dead. The voice of a man watching his own funeral. Who is he? She stood there, arms wrapped around herself, mascara running down her cheeks. Good, I thought viciously. Let her hurt. His name is Derek Lawson. He's a senior manager at the firm. The words hung in the air between us like smoke. How long? She hesitated. How long, Danielle? 14 months. 14 months. I did the math even as my brain screamed at me to stop, to not make it worse. Our 10th anniversary trip to Niagara Falls was 11 months ago. She'd already been sleeping with him when I booked the hotel, when I surprised her with the balcony suite overlooking the falls, when she let me hold her and told me she loved me, and I believed every single word. I stood up, wiped my face with my sleeve. The blood from my hand left a streak across my jaw, but I didn't care. I want you out by tomorrow night. Stay with your boyfriend. Tony, this is my house, too. Then I'll leave. But Danielle? I grabbed my keys from the counter, leaving bloody fingerprints on the marble. This marriage is over. You killed it. I walked out. I didn't look back. Within 2 hours of arriving at my mother's house, the entire family had assembled. That's how Benedetto's worked. Someone was hurting, so we showed up. No questions asked, no RSVPs required. Dom and Polly arrived first, still in their work clothes from the shop. Gina came with red-rimmed eyes, still carrying the guilt of being the messenger. Maria drove from Cleveland Heights with her husband in tow, and Uncle Sal materialized like he'd been waiting for exactly this moment. Ma made coffee. Lots of coffee. "I'll kill him," Polly said. He was pacing the living room, unable to sit still. "Just give me a name and an address. That's all I need." "No." I was sitting in my father's old armchair, the one nobody had touched since he died. It felt right to be there now. "We do this right. We do this legal. I'm not going to jail for her." Maria, always the practical one, was already taking notes on her phone. "First thing tomorrow, you call a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, the best divorce attorney in the city." Dom nodded. "Angela Wright. She handled Vinnie Caruso's divorce. Got him the house, the business, everything." "I'll call her in the morning," I said. Uncle Sal cleared his throat. He was 72 years old, retired from 40 years at the Ford plant, and he'd been married to Aunt Rita for 50 years. When he spoke, we listened. The community needs to know. They'll hear it from us or they'll hear rumors. Better they hear truth. I opened my mouth to argue, to say something about privacy, about dignity, but Gina cut me off. "Tony." Her voice was shaking again. "There's something else. In the video. I didn't want to say it, but he was wearing a wedding ring." The room went silent. "I looked him up," she continued. "Derek Lawson. He has a wife, 3 kids. They live in Rocky River." For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then the room erupted. Later, after everyone had left, I sat at Dom's kitchen table with my laptop open. His wife had bandaged my hand and forced me to eat leftover lasagna I couldn't taste. The kids were asleep upstairs. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. I looked up Derek Lawson. LinkedIn showed me a polished headshot. Square jaw, confident smile, the kind of face that belonged on a financial services billboard. Senior manager at Mitchell and Associates Accounting. Harvard MBA. Member of several professional organizations. His profile radiated success. Facebook was worse. His profile was public, and I scrolled through it like picking at a scab. Happy family photos with his wife Ashley, blonde, pretty, smiling at the camera with complete trust. 3 kids, 8, 6, and 4. Christmas morning in matching pajamas. Soccer games with orange slices at halftime. Disney World with Mickey ears and exhausted, happy faces. This man had everything I wanted. He had the wife, the kids, the life I'd spent 12 years trying to build. And it wasn't enough for him. It was never going to be enough. I thought about Ashley Lawson, asleep in her bed 3 suburbs away, completely unaware that her whole world was built on a lie. She deserved to know. But not yet. First, I needed to protect myself. Angela Wright's office was on the 42nd floor of a downtown Cleveland high-rise. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over Lake Erie, and everything, the furniture, the art, the receptionist desk, screamed money and power. She was 55 years old, silver-haired, and her handshake could crack walnuts. Former prosecutor turned family law specialist with a reputation for being ruthless but fair. "Mr. Benedetto," she gestured to the leather chair across from her desk. "Tell me everything." So I did. The video, the confrontation, the 14 months, the other man's wife and kids. I talked until my throat was dry, and she listened without interrupting, taking notes in handwriting I couldn't read. When I finished, she set down her pen. "Ohio is a no-fault divorce state, but infidelity can affect spousal support and property division. Do you own the home jointly?" I paid for it. My name, my down payment, my mortgage payments. She contributed some, but I have records. "Good. What about her income?" "She makes more than me, by a lot. She's been pushing for a partnership at the firm." Angela nodded. Then her expression shifted. Subtle, but I caught it. Mr. Benedetto, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Anything. Has your wife ever discussed your finances with unusual interest? Specifically, your business? I paused. Thought about it. Actually, yes. About 8 months ago, she suddenly wanted to help with the shop's books. Said we could save on accountant fees. I thought she was trying to be more involved. Angela's eyes narrowed. Did you give her access? No, my brother Dom handles the books. He said it was weird that she asked. That may have been very fortunate. She leaned forward. I'll explain why later. For now, I'm going to need a full financial disclosure from your business. I didn't fully understand what she was implying, but the cold weight in my stomach told me it was nothing good. On Wednesday, I wrote Ashley Lawson a letter. I sat at Dom's kitchen table for 2 hours, starting and stopping, crumpling paper and tossing it in the trash. How do you tell a stranger that her life is a lie? How do you destroy someone's world with kindness? In the end, I kept it simple. Mrs. Lawson, my name is Tony Benedetto. I am married to Danielle Benedetto, née Harper. I recently discovered that our spouses have been engaged in an affair for approximately 14 months. I am informing you because I believe you deserve to know the truth as I did. I have video evidence if you require proof. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this. I know this will change your life. It changed mine. I included my phone number, signed my name, mailed it certified, signature required. I didn't tell anyone I was doing this, not even my family. This felt like something I needed to do alone. Thursday morning, I returned to the house to find Danielle's car in the driveway. She wasn't supposed to be there. She was supposed to be gone, staying at a hotel because, as I later learned, Derek wouldn't let her stay with him. Too risky, he'd said. Think of his family. I walked in to find her standing in the living room with a man in a cheap suit and an expensive briefcase. Tony. Her voice was different now, harder, more professional. This is Robert Blackwell, my attorney. The attorney stepped forward, hand extended. I didn't take it. Mr. Benedetto, my client is seeking equitable distribution of all marital assets, including 50% of the value of Benedetto and Sons Auto Repair. I laughed. Actually laughed, a sound that surprised even me. The business is my father's. It was in the family for 40 years before I married her. It's protected. Danielle's composure cracked slightly. I've been supporting this household while you played mechanic with your brothers. I have a right to... Supporting the household? I cut her off. With my father's social security we refused? With the inheritance from my grandmother we invested? With the income from my business? I turned to her lawyer, keeping my voice calm even as my heart pounded. You can talk to Angela Wright. Get out of my house. They left. Danielle shot me one last look, something between anger and desperation, but I was already pulling out my phone to call Angela. That night, she called me back with news that made my blood run cold. I had my forensic accountant look at something. Your sister-in-law mentioned that Danielle was very interested in the shop's client list. Yeah, Dom mentioned that too. Tony, Derek Lawson's firm handles accounting for small businesses, including auto repair shops. She paused. If Danielle had gotten access to your books and client list, the realization hit me like a punch to the gut. She was going to steal our clients. Or worse, she could have created financial problems that would have justified her taking half of a failing business. I've seen it before. I sat in the dark for a long time after that call. The woman I'd loved, the woman I'd built a life with, hadn't just betrayed me. She'd been planning to destroy everything my family had built for 2 generations. The following Sunday, I walked into my mother's house expecting the usual chaos. What I found was something else entirely. Every seat was taken. Every seat at the table, every spot on the couch, every folding chair we owned and several we'd borrowed. Extended family I only saw at weddings and funerals. Neighbors who'd known me since I was in diapers. Friends from high school, from the shop, from church. Father DiMaggio was there, sitting in the corner with a cup of coffee and a plate of cookies, looking like he belonged. What? I couldn't finish the sentence. My mother appeared at my side, taking my arm. This is what family means, Antonio. You don't have to ask. The evening was overwhelming in the best possible way. People hugged me. They told me stories about their own divorces, their own heartbreaks, their own survivals. They pressed food into my hands and money into my pockets, which I tried to refuse and ultimately couldn't. They loved me, loudly and without reservation. I learned later that word had spread fast. Danielle had been removed from the St. Anne's Society at church. The gym she used, owned by a cousin I barely knew, had canceled her membership. The dry cleaner she'd used for years suddenly couldn't fit her into their schedule. Restaurant after restaurant found themselves fully booked whenever she called. The community had made its judgment, and Danielle Harper was officially out. I found my mother in the kitchen, refilling coffee cups. "Ma, this feels mean. I don't want to destroy her." She stopped what she was doing and looked at me with those dark eyes that had seen everything. Wars and babies and deaths and resurrections. "You're not destroying her, Antonio. She destroyed herself. We're just not pretending otherwise." I never spoke ill of Danielle publicly. Not once. I think that made people respect me more, somehow. I refused to be the bitter ex-husband, refused to add fuel to the fire consuming her reputation. But I also didn't stop it from burning. The call from Ashley Lawson came on a Friday evening, 2 weeks after I'd mailed the letter. I was closing up the shop alone, the smell of motor oil and metal familiar and comforting. The phone rang with an unknown number, Rocky River area code. "Is this Tony Benedetto?" Her voice was hollow. I recognized the sound immediately, the particular emptiness that comes from crying until there's nothing left. "Yes." "This is Ashley Lawson," a shaking breath. "I got your letter. I need to see the video." We met at a coffee shop in Westlake, neutral territory. She was younger than I expected, 36, blonde, with the kind of tired beauty that came from raising 3 kids while holding a household together. Her eyes were swollen and red. She watched the video on her phone while I sat across from her, hands wrapped around a coffee I couldn't drink. I watched her face as she saw her husband kiss my wife. Watched her grip tighten on the phone. Watched something fundamental shatter behind her eyes. When it ended, she set the phone down carefully like it might explode. "There's something you should know," she said. Her voice was too steady, the kind of calm that meant shock hadn't worn off yet. "Danielle isn't the first." "What?" "I found out last year that Derek had an affair with someone else, a woman from his gym. But he promised it was over. He went to therapy. I thought—" She broke down then, covering her face with her hands. "I have 3 children. I believed him. I didn't gloat. I didn't say, 'I told you so' to a woman I'd never met, who'd done nothing wrong except trust her husband. I just handed her a napkin from the dispenser. I'm sorry. I really am. Nobody deserves this." "What are you going to do?" she asked. "Get divorced. Move on. Build a life without her." "I don't know if I can do that." Her voice cracked. "The kids, that's your choice. But Ashley—" I waited until she looked at me. "You deserve better than a man who lies to you while you raise his children." She nodded slowly. Then, almost as an afterthought, "Derek has been nervous lately. More than when I confronted him last year. I think something else is going on." I filed that away. Derek Lawson's world crumbled in slow motion. Ashley confronted him. From what I heard later, through the grapevine of mutual connections that exists in any metropolitan area, it was ugly. She kicked him out. He tried to blame Danielle. She pursued me, he reportedly said, as if that absolved him of anything. It didn't. At the office, word got out. I genuinely don't know how. I never said anything, and I doubt Ashley did either. Maybe someone saw them together. Maybe Derek confessed to a friend who wasn't really a friend. These things have a way of surfacing. The HR investigation at Mitchell & Associates started as a routine matter. Derek's affair with a subordinate, Danielle was technically junior to him, violated company policy. Clear-cut. Easy. But investigations have a way of uncovering more than they're looking for. Derek had been using company time and resources for personal matters. Those client dinners on his expense reports, dates with Danielle, the conference in Chicago, a romantic getaway. He'd been manipulating project assignments to keep her on his team, giving her favorable reviews she may or may not have deserved. This wasn't just an affair. It was fraud. Derek Lawson was terminated, escorted from the building with a cardboard box. 15 years at the firm, gone in an afternoon. Danielle wasn't fired. Technically, she was the subordinate, the victim in HR's eyes. But she was moved to a different team, and her reputation was destroyed. The partnership she'd been gunning for? Gone. Senior partners don't want scandal attached to their names. She was given a choice: resign quietly or be managed out over the next 6 months. She resigned. 1 month after discovery, Danielle came to the shop. It was evening. I was closing up alone, had sent Dom and Polly home early because we'd finished the day's work. The radio was playing something soft. I don't remember what. The bay doors were down, and I was sweeping the floor when I heard the knock. She looked terrible. No makeup, which I'd never seen in 12 years of marriage. She'd lost weight. Too much. Too fast. Her eyes were red-rimmed and desperate. "Tony, please, can we talk?" I didn't tell her to leave. I didn't invite her in either. I just set the broom against the wall and waited. "I made a terrible mistake," she said, and her voice cracked on the last word. He made me feel seen. "You were always so busy with the family, with the shop, with everyone else. I felt invisible." "You felt invisible." "Yes, I know it doesn't excuse—" "Danielle." My voice was quiet, tired. "Every Sunday dinner, I sat next to you. I held your hand in front of my whole family. I introduced you to every person who walked in as my beautiful wife. When did I ever make you invisible?" She couldn't answer. "You know what I think?" I leaned against my father's workbench, the same one where he'd taught me to change my first spark plug at 7 years old. "I think you were never happy. Not with me. Not with this life. You wanted something else. Something bigger, richer, more impressive than a mechanic from Parma. That's not— You used to make fun of my family. They're so loud. Do they have to hug everyone? Why do we have to go every Sunday? I was just— You were embarrassed by me, by us." I met her eyes. "And Derek? Derek wears suits. Derek has an office with a view. Derek was the upgrade." She was crying now, tears streaming down her face unchecked. "But here's the thing, Danielle. Derek threw you away the second it got hard. You know who didn't throw you away when things got hard? Me. After the miscarriage. When your father died. When you got passed over for promotion the first time. I was there, every single time. Tony, please." I pushed off the workbench. "I'm not forgiving you. Not because I'm angry. I'll let go of the anger eventually. But because forgiveness means trust, and I will never trust you again. We're done." I walked past her, through the side door that led to the parking lot. She stayed in the shop crying, and I didn't look back. I went to my mother's house and ate leftover pasta at the kitchen table while she rubbed my shoulders and didn't say a word. The divorce proceedings dragged through the spring. Discovery was a brutal process. Every financial document, Every email, every text message pulled into the light and examined. Danielle's records showed she'd spent approximately $18,000 on the affair over 14 months. Spa trips, lingerie, a weekend getaway to Chicago that she'd told me was a work conference. My records were clean. I'd lived modestly, put money into the house and the business, saved for a future that would never come. The twist came when Angela's forensic accountant dug deeper into Derek's finances. "Why would Danielle pay for the hotels?" Angela asked me during one of our sessions. "Derek makes more money than she does." Further digging revealed the answer. Derek had a gambling problem. Online poker mostly, but also trips to casinos that his wife didn't know about. He was in debt, significant debt, and Danielle had been helping him manage it. She wasn't just his lover, she was bankrolling him. Mediation failed spectacularly. Danielle wanted half of everything: the house equity, my retirement accounts, and alimony because her career had been damaged by the divorce publicity. As if she hadn't damaged it herself. Angela was surgical in her response. She documented Danielle's dissipation of marital assets. She showed that the house down payment came from my inheritance, separate property. She proved that Danielle's career damage was entirely self-inflicted. At one point, Danielle slammed her hand on the table. "This isn't fair. I gave 12 years to this marriage." I looked at her across the conference room. "You gave 12 years and took 14 months. The math doesn't work in your favor." We were going to court. Before the trial, Derek Lawson reached out to my lawyer. He wanted to testify against Danielle. "Why would he do that?" Angela asked me. The answer was simple. Ashley was destroying him in their divorce, and he blamed Danielle for seducing him. He wanted revenge. I thought about it for a long time. Using Derek's testimony would probably help my case. It would make Danielle look worse, reveal more details, add weight to my side of the ledger. "No," I finally said. "I'm not going to win my divorce by using her other loser. Whatever Derek says, it makes us both look petty. I want to win on the facts." Angela smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from her. "That's the right call, and it's going to look very good to the judge." Trial day arrived on a Tuesday in late June. I wore a suit borrowed from my brother Dom. I didn't own one. It fit well enough, and Maria made me get a haircut the day before. I looked respectable. I looked like a man who'd been wronged but wasn't looking for sympathy. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. No jury, just the judge, a silver-haired woman named Patricia Kellerman who'd been on the bench for 30 years. She'd seen everything, according to Angela. Nothing surprised her anymore. When I took the stand, I told the truth. Simply, without embellishment. I described finding out, the confrontation, the devastation. I didn't cry. I'd done enough crying in private, but I didn't hide the emotion in my voice either. "Mr. Benedetto," Angela asked, "what did you want from this marriage?" I thought about the question, about all the years, all the plans, all the dreams that had turned to ash. "A family," I said. "Kids, growing old together. Sitting on the porch when we were 80, complaining about our joints and bragging about our grandchildren. That's all I ever wanted." The courtroom was silent. I could feel eyes on me. The judge, the attorneys, the court reporter, and Danielle, who wouldn't meet my gaze. Her testimony was painful to watch. She tried to rehabilitate herself, painting me as emotionally unavailable, my family as suffocating and controlling, herself as trapped in a life she never wanted. Some of it might even have been true, in her mind. Angela's cross-examination was merciless. "Ms. Benedetto, you testified that you felt your husband was emotionally unavailable. Did he attend your father's funeral?" "Yes." "Did he drive 8 hours to be there when your father had his stroke?" "Yes." Did he take time off work to help you care for your father in his final months? Yes. Does that sound like emotional unavailability to you? No answer. You described his family as suffocating. Were you forced to attend family dinners? No, but there was pressure. Were you ever forbidden from pursuing your career? No. Did anyone in the Benedetto family ever treat you with anything other than warmth and inclusion? A long pause. No. No further questions. The judge ruled on a Thursday afternoon. I got the house, mostly. I had to pay Danielle a small buyout for her contributions, but it was manageable. Retirement accounts were split closer to 55-45 in my favor. No alimony. Danielle earned more than I did, and the judge noted her dissipation of marital assets in her written decision. Divorce final. 12 years, done. As the judge announced the final decree, I looked at Danielle for the first time in weeks. She looked back, and for a moment I saw the woman I'd married, young and hopeful and full of plans. Then the moment passed, and she was just a stranger I'd shared a decade with. There was no hatred in my eyes, just grief and finality. I nodded once. Then I turned and left with my family. The year of healing was harder than I expected. I moved back into the house. It felt empty. Too quiet after years of carefully maintained tension I hadn't recognized until it was gone. For the first few weeks, I just existed there, sleeping in the guest room because the master bedroom felt contaminated. Then I started to rebuild. I repainted every room, tore out the modern fixtures Danielle had insisted on, the sleek chrome handles, the minimalist light fixtures, the all-white bathroom that felt like a hospital. My mother brought over furniture from storage, a dining table that had belonged to my grandmother, a bookshelf my father had built when I was a baby, a faded rug that smelled like childhood. The house started to feel like home again. I went to therapy. Maria insisted, and I was too tired to argue. Italians don't do therapy, I joked at the first session. Dr. Patricia Walsh, a tiny woman with enormous glasses and a BS detector that could spot a lie from space, didn't smile. Italians who want to be emotionally healthy do therapy, Mr. Benedetto. She was right. I went every week for 6 months, then every other week, then once a month. I processed the anger, the betrayal, the grief of losing not just a marriage but the future I'd imagined. I learned words for things I'd felt my whole life but never named. It helped. Christina Russo walked back into my life at Sunday dinner, 8 months after my divorce was finalized. I didn't see her at first. I was in the kitchen, arguing with Paulie about whether the Browns had any chance of making the playoffs. They didn't, but hope springs eternal. Then I heard my mother's voice, higher than usual, full of warmth. "Christina! Look at you, Bella! Tony, come here!" I walked into the living room, and there she was. Christina Russo. We'd grown up on the same street, been in the same kindergarten class, had our first communion together at St. Rocco's. She'd had a massive crush on me in high school. Everyone knew except me, apparently. After college, she'd moved to Pittsburgh, became a nurse, got married to a guy named Brian, who turned out to have a worse relationship with alcohol than with his wife. She'd been divorced for 3 years. Now she was back in Cleveland, looking for a fresh start. Tony Benedetto. She grinned at me, and it was like no time had passed at all. "I heard you got gray. I heard you got divorced." "Yeah, well," she shrugged. "Turns out loving someone and being able to save them are two different things." I liked that she didn't sugarcoat it. I liked that she wasn't looking for pity. We talked for 2 hours, about our marriages, our families, the years we'd missed. She told me about Brian, the drinking, the promises, the final straw when he showed up to their nephew's birthday party barely able to stand. I told her about Danielle, the affair, the betrayal, the long road back to feeling like a person again. She didn't judge. She didn't offer platitudes. She just listened. And when I was done, she said, "Well, that sucks." I laughed for the first time in months. A real laugh. Not the performative kind I'd been faking at family gatherings. We became friends. Real friends. Coffee on Saturday mornings. Movies on Thursday nights. Helping each other with home repairs. She was better at plumbing than I was, which bruised my male ego in a way that made her laugh. My family watched hopefully, but didn't push. Much. 6 months later, we were watching a football game at my house. The Browns were losing, of course they were, and we were arguing about whether to switch to the Guardians game instead. Christina was gesturing with her beer bottle, making her case for baseball's superior entertainment value, and I was pretending to be scandalized by her betrayal of Cleveland football. Then I looked at her. Really looked. She had sauce on her chin from the wings we'd ordered. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She was wearing an ancient sweatshirt that had been mine in college and had somehow migrated to her house weeks ago. She was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. "Hey," I said. She stopped mid-argument. "What? You want to get dinner sometime? Like, dinner? Not let's grab food dinner." Her smile started slow and ended up taking over her whole face. "Took you long enough, Benedetto." "What?" "Tony, I've been waiting since I was 15. She leaned over and kissed my cheek. "Yeah, dinner sounds nice." Our first official date was at a nice restaurant downtown. I wore the suit again. She wore a blue dress, a different blue than the one Danielle had worn in the video, but I noticed anyway. I think she might have noticed me noticing, because she squeezed my hand under the table and didn't mention it. We talked about everything and nothing. Our pasts, our hopes, our fears. I told her I didn't know if I was ready for something serious. She told me she wasn't in a rush. "Let's just see what happens," she said. So we did. I proposed on a Sunday because of course I did. We'd been together for 8 months. 8 months of dinners and movies and long conversations on my porch. 8 months of her gradually moving into my life. First a toothbrush, then a drawer, then half my closet reorganized because apparently I'd been hanging my shirts wrong for 38 years. Sunday dinner at my mother's house. The whole family was there. Kids running everywhere, uncles arguing about politics, aunts gossiping in the kitchen. Normal? Perfect. I stood up and cleared my throat. "So, I have something to say." The room went quiet. 30 pairs of eyes turned toward me. Christina looked confused, then suspicious, then, as I dropped to one knee, shocked. "Chrissy, you've known me since I was 8 years old and had a stupid bowl cut." Laughter rippled through the room. "You know everything about me, the good and the bad. You've seen me at my worst this past year, and you stayed." Her eyes were filling with tears. The good kind. "I'm not asking you to fix me or complete me or whatever. I'm asking you to be my partner, to build something real with me." I pulled out the ring, my grandmother's ring, which my mother had given me the week before with tears streaming down her face. "Will you marry me?" "Yes." She was laughing and crying at the same time. "Obviously, yes, you idiot." The room erupted. My mother was sobbing. Polly was cheering. Somewhere, a child screamed with excitement, and someone dropped a plate, and Uncle Sal started a toast that nobody heard because everyone was hugging. Christina pulled me to my feet and kissed me, and I thought, this is it. This is what I was looking for. It was here all along. The wedding was 6 months later. St. Rocco's Church, same as my first wedding, but nothing else was the same. Small ceremony. Family and close friends only. No ice sculptures or imported flowers or 300-person guest lists. Just the people who mattered, packed into the church where I'd been baptized, made my first communion, said goodbye to my father. I was crying before Christina even walked down the aisle. Dom punched my shoulder and told me to get it together, but he was crying too. When I saw her in her dress, simple, elegant, absolutely perfect, I forgot how to breathe. Father DiMaggio performed the ceremony. He'd known me since I was a baby, had watched me grow up, had held my hand through grief and joy and everything in between. "Tony, Christina," he said, "you've both walked through fire to get here. That makes this even more precious." The reception was in my mother's backyard. Homemade food, my cousin's band playing standards, and occasionally switching to Frank Sinatra, kids running wild while the adults danced and ate and celebrated. Christina and I danced to "That's Amore," because of course we did. At one point, I looked around, at my brothers arguing about something stupid, at my mother crying happy tears, at my new wife laughing at something Maria said, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the absence of pain. The pain was still there, would probably always be there in some form. But peace anyway, because I'd survived the worst thing that ever happened to me, and I'd come out the other side into something better than I'd ever imagined. 3 years later, the house was chaos. Beautiful, exhausting, perfect chaos. Anthony Jr. was 2 years old and had inherited my mother's stubbornness and Christina's complete lack of volume control. Rosa, named for my mother, obviously, was 6 months old and already had everyone wrapped around her tiny finger. Sunday dinner at our place. The tradition continued. I was holding the baby while stirring sauce with my free hand. Christina was in the living room, arguing with Dom about whether LeBron should have left Cleveland, an argument that had somehow continued for 4 years and showed no signs of resolution. My mother was teaching little Anthony how to make meatballs, which mostly meant watching him smash dough between his fingers and laughing at the mess. Somewhere in the chaos, I caught Christina's eye. She smiled at me, that smile that still made my heart skip, even after 3 years of marriage and 2 kids and countless arguments about dishes and laundry and who forgot to buy milk again. This is it, I thought. This is the life I wanted. I'd gotten it. I ran into Danielle once, about 6 months after Rosa was born, Cleveland Airport. I was picking up Christina's parents, standing near arrivals with a coffee I didn't need and nerves I couldn't explain. Then I saw her, across the terminal, alone, pulling a suitcase behind her. She'd aged. Not badly, just visibly. The years hadn't been kind, or maybe living with the consequences of your choices just shows on your face eventually. She'd left Cleveland after the divorce. Too many memories, too much judgment. Moved to Charlotte, got a job at a smaller firm. Never remarried, according to the grapevine that still connected our circles. Our eyes met for a moment. She looked like she might say something. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. I remembered when that mouth had said, "I do," and meant it, or at least I thought she meant it. I nodded. Not cold, not warm, just acknowledgement. We existed in the same space for a moment. Then we didn't. I turned and walked toward arrivals, where my father-in-law was already waving at me with the enthusiasm of a man who'd been stuck on a plane for 3 hours and desperately needed a bathroom. I didn't look back. That night, after the kids were asleep, Christina and I sat on the porch. The stars were out. Not as many as you'd see in the country, but enough. The neighborhood was quiet except for distant traffic and the occasional bark of someone's dog. Her head was on my shoulder, my arm around her waist. "Do you ever think about her?" she asked. Not jealous, not worried, just curious. I considered the question, really thought about it. "Sometimes," I said. Not with anger. More like, she's a chapter in a book I don't read anymore. That's healthy. Yeah, took a while to get there. I took her hand. Studied her fingers intertwined with mine. The wedding ring I'd put there. The calluses from years of nursing. The small scar from a kitchen accident our first month of living together. You know what I think about more? I said. What? How lucky I am. That I got a second chance. That I found you. She turned her head and kissed my shoulder through my shirt. We found each other, Benedetto. Yeah, we did. Inside, Rosa started crying. That particular wail that meant she needed changing, not feeding. A moment later, Anthony's voice drifted down the stairs. Daddy? Daddy, I want water. Christina laughed. Duty calls. I kissed her forehead, stood up, and went inside. Rosa was red-faced and furious in her crib. Anthony was sitting up in bed, looking at me with those big brown eyes that were exactly like my mother's. Hey, buddy. Water, huh? Yeah. And maybe a story? Maybe a short one. I changed Rosa's diaper while Anthony picked out a book. By the time I finished, Christina had appeared with a sippy cup and that look on her face. The tired, amused, hopelessly in love look that I'd fallen for 1,000 times. We read the story together, put Anthony back to bed, rocked Rosa until she fell asleep. Then we went back to the porch and the stars and each other. Life continued,